Welcome back to the Director's Garage. I am your host and resident idiot, Michael, and never more so than today, because it turns out I purchased a headphone I swore under oath I would never own. Anyone speak Greek? I'm having an alphabetical problem with the Greek language. I know alpha, beta, epsilon, kappa, lambda, omega, but when it comes to P, I'm drawing a complete blank until now. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Phi. The most absurd, stupid Frankenphone I once promised myself I'd never fall for. It has cast its spell on me, and I am absolutely obsessed. I have to give a shout out to a viewer, to Nicholas Yantz, who way back in October wrote a comment below the video about how the Abyss Phi 1266 is the headphone he thought would best suit my sound preference. Well, let's all crack open a cold one for old Nicholas, because he hit the nail on the head. So, as you can tell, we've reordered shows a little bit. I shuffled a couple. Folks commented on the last episode that we're doing too many IEMs around here at the Director's Garage, and to a certain extent, I see their point. Just keep in mind, I'm sort of at the mercy of whatever blind what's in the box is sent my way. I can't control what gets sent to me, and I receive a bunch of IEMs, it just so happens, along with some killer over-ears like the Focal Radiance. So yeah, we flipped the script a little bit, and we're going to do the Phi today. And this is a headphone I have been hiding from you, though I've been doing it in plain sight. For the past few episodes, the box has been back here staring right at you, if you noticed, and the headphone was sitting right back here on this stand, just in the background, you know. I do love an Easter egg, and that's just my little bit of mischief from your resident idiot. Now, this is going to be a bigger episode. I've spent more time with this headphone than any other lately. Hours and hours. I was prepping my taxes. I actually didn't mind taxes thanks to the Phi. I pulled out the vinyl. I played reel-to-reels. I version searched across Roon and HD tracks and Tidal for the very best I could find. These have been a joy. Now, when this deal for the Abyss Phi came to me, I was already deep on the hunt for this Blue Hawaii back here. Whoa. Knock that over. Now, I was geared up to pull the trigger on a brand new Blue Hawaii from Headamp. I think I told you that. I was looking for a gold one. But then the Phi deal came along, and I was in this dilemma. I couldn't swing the Blue Hawaii, brand new anyway, and this Phi deal. So I started looking for cheaper amps for the stacks just so I could swing the deal for the Phi. But I really wanted the Blue Hawaii for episode 50. I wanted that timing to work. So the Phi was going to be a pass. And then the morning I was set to buy the brand new Blue Hawaii, a used one popped up on HeadPhi. And I sent a note to the guy saying, I'm buying your Blue Hawaii. Consider it sold. And that freed up just enough money so that I could swing this deal. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Amen.
So let's get it started. And I'm going to start out with ergonomics, because that's what I seem to always do. Now, finding your fit with the Phi takes something of an engineering degree. I mean, not really, but there are so many variables at play here that change the tuning entirely. And I'm not talking about like little tweaks. I'm talking like wholesale alterations of the sound just by reorienting the placement of the drivers in relation to your ears. The pads can be rearranged in any direction because of this guy right here, this magnetic structure. So you can put the fat part of the ear pad, see there's a thinner and a thicker part of the headphone? Well, you can put that thicker part up or down. You can arrange it any way to your head that you want, and it will change the way the headphone sounds. Now, the way the pictures were showing it was the fat part goes on the bottom. And I'm like, okay, so I started there. But when you put the fat part on the bottom, what I got was too much mid-range, and it was kind of grating. It was way too harsh for my sound preference anyway. So if you move the fat part of the ear pad to the back, because, you know, who doesn't like the fat part in the back? That was totally uncalled for. But when you do that, the upper mid issue completely disappears for me. And then you can also control, while you're at it, the slam on the headphones. The closer these drivers are to each other, the less slam that comes through or is perceived. So I've got them tightly oriented. You see this little slider mechanism here? They go in and out towards each other. Well, the tighter together they are, now it's a really tight seal on my ears. And when I shake my head, the headphone stays with me. Well, this is a nice tight bass sound. And if I want to get that thump, that deep, rich boom, I just pull these guys apart. And now they're so loose on my head when I widen the band. Look, they'll actually shake around and it'll go opposite. It's not staying with me. But suddenly the back of your head is shaken anytime that bass drum thumps. It's total bass head territory. But then you get tired of it, you just push them together again, and that bass thump disappears. But without any sacrifice to detail in either position. In fact, every slight manipulation or change to the orientation of the drivers towards your ear will subtly or not so subtly alter the sound experience. Now, when I first got these, the elastic on the head pad up here had worn down, and these little elastic straps, they weren't holding enough tension, and the pad was actually touching the top of the frame. So what I was doing was I was putting a washcloth, I don't even have it here, but I was putting a washcloth underneath the pad to get the orientation right. And I mean, you want to talk about, these things look ridiculous enough without the washcloth. With it, I went way past dorky to complete goober. Ouch. But here's the rub. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, cheap about the Abyss Phi. That new head pad up here, this little thing, the leathery thing, brace yourself, $250.
What?
The ear pads, yeah, that's going to cost you too. But everything on this set is engineered to the exact tolerance. The engineering that went into these things. You see on the backside, this foam, the material between the magnets and the frame, well, it just kind of looks like a pot scrubber, and you'd think, well, they just put something in there or some foam or something. No, not with the Abyss Phi. This is foamed aluminum. It's engineered to give you the most open sound achievable. So yeah, these things are absolutely insane, and they demand things of you, like your wallet or your car keys, your home. And for those sacrifices, it will deliver to you one of the very, very best sonic experiences ever. Maybe the best. Shoot out to come. But they do demand amplification, and not just your ordinary amplification. There is one word to describe the kind of power you need to drive a headphone like the Abyss, and that word is shit ton. No. Make that royal shit ton. How much? Well, you see that $7,000 Macintosh integrated amp back there? Yeah, not a frickin' chance. At 75% power, it's as quiet as a night at the library. This headphone was made for an amp like the Woo Audio WA5LE, and every single one of its 8-watt blast of 300B goodness cranked up to high power and using the 4-pin connector. And my goodness, does this pairing deliver. These headphones will call you on your shit. If you have a bad track, a subpar mix, it's like, what's wrong with these things? You know, where's the sound stage? Where'd the bass go? No, somebody just did a shitty mix. And I have like 5 digital versions of some albums. I know it's a sickness, but there are often like 3 title versions too. But an album like, say, Supertramp's, even in the quietest moments, I have a 192 recording that's off of vinyl. It's absolute dog meat. It's horrible. And then for some reason I have this version off Blu-ray that's like 6 channels, and you put 6 channels onto the 2-channel Abyss, and it's like pea soup. Its sound is coming from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. It's total psychotic breaks. But then I go to this Tidal version, and it's like, whoa, impact, clarity, imaging, it's all there. You can't get away with bad tracks on the Abyss. Every flaw is exposed. By the way, that's not always the best thing, because sometimes you just want to throw on some tracks, and with this one, you're going to get disappointed every time something poorly recorded pops up. Simply put, the Abyss 1266 demands your very best to deliver its very best. And its very best is in the stratosphere of headphone experiences. These are the real deal. Let's talk about sound properties. You want detail? This is a detail king. You hear everything. You hear every breath, every whisper, every pluck, scrape, and shake. It's the fastest experience short of an electrostatic, but with the bass response that electrostatics would drool over. Now that said, it's not detail on the order of the stacks, no question. There is a driver revision, though, that gets it a little bit closer. Think of this version here that you're looking at. This is the Abyss 5. There's the Abyss TC, which stands for Total Consciousness, which is more like version 5. This is like version 3.0, and you can tell that there's a little code up here that says 5.12.66. Now the later ones are TC or CC, and that stands for ceramic when they went to ceramic on the ears. And then TC is Total Consciousness. They did a slight tweak to the drivers where the drivers get a little more detail in them, and the bass is tightened up a bit, which I'm not entirely sure is something I'd want to do. And the imaging on this headphone is tremendous. You know how I usually tell you that we have kind of a battle going on usually between the imaging and the soundstage? Well, these are a soundstage headphone that happens to image really well. It leans toward the soundstage end of the spectrum, but the imaging is right behind. Now let's get into sound structure. And you know when I'm talking about sound structure, of course I'm talking about the bass and the treble and the mids, but not in that order, no. See what I did there? I kind of switched the two. So let's talk about that bass. And how intense is the bass on this headphone? It is rumbling, stumbling impact of a physical nature. That is if the headphones are positioned wide, remember? In fact, if you take the Abyss Phi off your head, the waves from the bass crash into each other and create this distortion I've never heard from any other headphone before. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. But this is a bass head experience that can be as intense as you want to make it, which is really cool. Again, the positioning will give you entirely different experiences in the bass response. I like the ear cups wide, barely touching my head, and that brings that down low thump that I really enjoy. Moving on to mids, and the vocals on this headphone are so sweet. Everything is there. There's not a peak out of place. They're not shouty. Well, you can make them shouty, I suppose. Just, tweak it like that or something. They'll get shouty on you. But the mids aren't too recessed. They're just solid. They're really solid. They don't stand out the way the treble and the bass do. That's not really a knock. It's just that the mids don't really call attention to themselves the way the treble and the bass does. And then finally, the treble. Now, these are so fast, you could maybe argue that the crazy detail is a minus, but man, it's such a delight to hear triangles and cymbals that sharp, and there's sparkle, they're so lifelike. I've heard problems in the upper frequencies, but only because it was a poor recording. It's a drool-worthy treble that rides that ragged edge between bright and tame. It's the best treble this side of an electrostatic, and even then, I think it's too close to call. Now I'm going to talk about music, and I'm just going to talk about the things that just really impressed me because, like I said, I've spent so much time with these. I've had a chance to audition a lot of tracks. Now, the first big smile off this headphone came from one of my all-time favorite records, Abbey Road by the Beatles. When Something came on and it hit the bridge with Ringo's toms, the gorgeous arrangement, I got what could only be described as a shit-eating grin. There's a lot of shits in today's episode, I'm sorry, but it was a musical moment we all dream of experiencing. It's what we live in this hobby for. It's moments like those that will remind us of why we love our headphones so much. Next up, I'm going to talk about Elton John and Honky Chateau. Now, the bass on Honky Cat digs down to like the center of the earth. And then you have a popping horn section left and right, and then it's combined with Elton's syncopated rhythms on piano. There are drum fills and tom rolls and accents, and by the end of the song, he's got every band member contributing, and the Abyss is so freaking fast, you can hear everything that's happening. It's an absolute true delight. The entire album is a treat, and I gotta confess, I spent time with nearly all of Sir Elton's early albums on the Abyss, and there's not a single bad note on any one of them. It's just unfreaking believable. How about something slower? Let's talk Mona Lisas and Mad Hatters. It's a song that almost makes you cry when you hear it on a headphone like this. The piano is so realistic, and there's a gorgeous triple dubbing of Elton's vocals and mandolins across the top of the mix. It's an amazing track normally, and on the Abyss, it's just on another plane. Moving on, we're going to talk about David Bowie and Space Oddity. Now, the album came out in 1967, which is the year the director of Director's Garage was born. Yes, I'm as old as Sgt. Pepper. But the album itself was remixed in 2019, and it's positively immersive on the Abyss. David's voice never comes at you from the same angle for very long. It'll be in the middle, and then all of a sudden it's out at the extremes, and then it's maybe up here. And then there's this orchestration that's sweeping across the soundstage. It's just absolutely gorgeous. The bass kicks only with moderation, but when it hits, it's a terrific surprise. David is kind of tuned into the mid-range on his EQ, but the vocals don't shout at you. This track is an absolute spectacle. Next, we're going to talk about Simon & Garfunkel and Bridge Over Troubled Water. And folks, this is a core album for me. It's maybe my favorite record of all time. Definitely top couple, but maybe my favorite of all time. And I'm going to run through a couple of songs from this record because it says so much about the Abyss and what it's able to do. The title track is super delicate. It's a piano-driven song, which is rare for a Simon & Garfunkel album. They were a acoustic guitar-driven duo. And this song is super delicate with Art's voice just gently resting on this piano bed, and then there's a kick drum that hits, and it hits with a compression effect that's got a slap echo attached to it, so it's a double compression effect. It's amazing. On Cecilia, Paul and Art's vocals are separated wide, and there's all these different interesting percussion instruments, and they're coming at you from all around the sound stage. Then as the song is winding down, the entire mix goes mono. And I think it's a production mistake because every single version I've heard, every single mastering of this I've heard has a mono fade out. I don't know why. So that's kind of interesting. And then that runs right into Keep the Customer Satisfied, which is this wide, heavy horn section, super wide. And the headphone, if the headphone's going to get shouty, it's going to be on this song, because as the song winds down, the horns crescendo and they grow and they explode. Very few headphones get the end of Keep the Customer Satisfied right, and the Abyss does just that. The detail on this headphone allows you to pick up each horn in the mix from a specific location. Everything about this record, from the finger picking to the vocals, is just spot on. It's so detailed, and the string arrangements are just gorgeous. They drift in and out of the mix delicately. The Only Living Boy in New York has the best bass on the album, and then there's this organ part that just cries at you. Paul's vocals are doubled. I think it's ADR. It's slightly delayed and it sounds like a duplicate, but there's lots of vocal tricks coming at you throughout this record. Sometimes they're doubled, sometimes they're overdubbed. It might be my favorite listen on The Abyss. And finally, how about some sticks? The Grand Illusion was just this massive destruction on The Abyss. Drum rolls across the soundstage, sound hitting you from all angles and crushing drums, guitars, they're singing across the mix. It's eye-wateringly beautiful. It almost brought a tear or two. I chose this because it shows the headphone is not just capable of nuance. If you want to go big or go home, the Abyss Phi is completely up to the challenge. Fooling Yourself is such a sonic delight. There's so much happening in this song with acoustic guitars and a synth that sets the melody, call and response, huge swells, and then it collapses in on itself for the verse. Come Sail Away was such a mammoth hit for the group. Such full range. It's got attacking guitars. It's Dennis DeYoung's best vocals, his signature song. This and Paradise Theater were Styx at their very best before the implosion between Tommy Shaw and Dennis DeYoung. They produced great 70s pop art. Styx was the real deal in their prime. Check them out. So, is the Abyss Phi worth the $5,000 entry level price tag? Which can go up to, you can get to $8,000 simply by adding a fancier cable and a carry case. You know, I mean, it gets pretty radical. And you're paying that much money to look like a complete doofus. There's no getting around these looks, folks. You're signing on for one dorky experience as a listener, you know? And it's an absurd amount of money to pay for anything that can't roll you through a drive-thru while you order an iced tea. But if you're looking for that pinnacle, the crazy, spare no cost, how good can I make my music sound? Yeah, they're totally worth the price if you can afford them. Simply put, there is nothing like this headphone. It's at or near the top of anything I've ever heard in a headphone. What does this headphone do right? Nearly everything. It's entirely tunable. Bass for days. Nearly unmatched detail. Dynamics. Fantastic. Great imaging. Soundstage as wide as it gets. Lifelike instrumentation and voice reproduction, but without losing musicality. So what's not to like? Well, you know, I talked about the money and I talked about the styling of them, but really the only thing that I would come up with as a negative beyond this is the amplification requirements. I mean, you've got to have something significant if you're going to drive them, and there are very few options out there. You know, if a $7,000 Macintosh can't get these things going, you're in big trouble. So, shootout? I mean, why not? I mean, that's got to be coming because we've got the Meze and the Utopia. Those are obvious choices. And then the 009S that we debuted back in episode 50. So we have ourselves like a 4 Summit Phi over-ear open-back headphones director's garage challenge coming, right? Let's take advantage while they're here. I'm going to ask you to subscribe now to the Director's Garage, because in the past month we have been working overtime to bring you some headphones that are really truly in that rarefied air, and we're going to continue to push into those limits and get into that thin air, but it doesn't happen without your support. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, give it a thumbs up, and if the Abyss Phi didn't impress you, I don't know what to tell you, because I can't find anything sonically wrong with these things. They're amazing. Check out the Director's Garage sale down below. I've got some new items in there, including the KSE-1500, which I really, really don't want to sell, but I can always buy another pair. I've got to start freeing up some Director's Garage funds because we got a lot of inventory sitting around here right now for a lot of money, so it's got to happen. Also, the Audio 46 5% off coupon code Director's Garage. Click the affiliate link below. Kicks money back to us. Thumbs up, and I will see you before you know it.